Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hey everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee and Milly channel. Today we are going to be reviewing the next one of the new Scooby-Doo movies, which is of course the Frickert Fracas. So this is meeting Jonathan Winters, am I correct in saying that, JayBee?
Yeah, Jonathan Winters, but I don't know who this person is, and really I think this is going to be a theme that we stick with, because for all I'm kind of taking the rick out of this series having guests that have completely, I don't know if I want to say aged like milk, but definitely more of a timepiece than, you know, long-lasting legacy characters. But I think that's equally an issue in Guess Who as well, so we'll see.
Here's the thing that I have, and I'm kind of agreeing with you on a lot of things. For me, the only one that stands out as somebody recognisable was the Addams Family, and that's the one they removed from the DVD series. It's kind of
well, they didn't remove it, did they?
Okay, there was some issues surrounding. So for me, like, if you were just to stick to the DVD series, I'm struggling to find anybody relatable. Here's something else.
There's names, isn't there? Like the Three Stooges. Everyone has heard the phrase or the saying, or they've heard someone say the Three Stooges. But I don't think a lot of people, at least not younger people, will know. Oh yeah, the Three Stooges. It's just, oh, I've heard that before somewhere.
Yeah, I've heard it, but to see the people, I wouldn't have had a clue.
No.
Like, I'd be like, oh, is that kind of a prequel to the Boo Brothers? Like, I just don't see it. And I feel like we've spoken to a lot of people that's worked on these series, and it's always like, oh yeah, we're normally quite conscious that we don't want it to age badly. And I feel like this kind of did, because it maybe lost a bit of relevance. And then it's really interesting that they'd go back to it and do a similar thing with Guess Who.
I mean, the thing is, I think what this series has done good so far is it doesn't make your enjoyment of the episode dependent on if you know the guest. Like, I think I kind of had an interesting point raised to me on Twitter like 2 months ago now, ages ago, and it's kind of like I was making fun of Guess Who in a Q&A, saying I can't connect with it and I have no interest in the episode if I don't know the guest, and someone was kind of like, well, can you argue the same thing in terms of the interviews you do? Like, do you expect people to be interested in your episode if they don't know the guest? And I guess my rebuttal from that end was, well, it's an interview based in real life, so we are learning about it. So if you want to, like, you know what I mean? It's like picking up a book for the first time. If you like the look of the front cover, and if you like, you know, even just the host at this point, we've had such a good back catalogue now, that when you go into it, you're going to leave knowing the guest. And in terms of relating it back to the new Scooby-Doo movies, I don't think we really get that. But at the same time, you don't really need to in a lot of these situations. Like, I don't need to know who Jonathan Winters is to enjoy the episode, because I feel like they just showcase caricatures of them, which I can enjoy.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, that for the kind of the Scooby-Doo and Guess Who kind of thing, a lot of it is perhaps some people just aren't that well known, and it's kind of like, maybe I can be if I do this.
I mean, you know which ones in Guess Who are going to age like horribly. So Ricky Gervais is going to age well. Like, he's been relatively popular, at least in the UK.
He's hilarious.
Since 2000 and the early 2000s, maybe even before, and continues to do hit shows like Afterlife and stuff. So I say that's gonna age quite well. The Office alone has gone on to, like, you know, do so much stuff, and I don't think his career's over. Whereas Liza Koshy,
Who?
well, she's like a YouTuber, right? And YouTubers, it's so difficult to stay relevant, because one minute you can be on the top of the planet, the next minute people are like, well, who are you? Or all it takes is one like exposed video, yeah, like, and sometimes for the right reasons. Like, one of my favorite YouTubers back in the day was someone called Tobuscus, and he got exposed for some pretty horrendous stuff. And nowadays, like, we have videos up on our channel that have more views than a Tobuscus video, and I can, like, he did like 50 million a song, like, it was mad. So Liza Koshy, she hasn't done anything that groundbreaking that people are going to remember her in, at least if she stays the same in X amount of time. There's like people like PewDiePie, even KSI, that have been popular since we were 5 years old. and are still popular now. Like, the longevity isn't there. But yeah, I have no idea who Jonathan Winters is. Do you know who, like, have you heard of him? Have you?
I don't, and honestly, this wasn't an episode that I feel like I've even seen before. So if you're in that position or you haven't seen it for a while, I guess just by way of recap, the gang are kind of just stopping off. I think it's at a fuel station where they bump into Jonathan Winters, whose car's broken down. So they offer to drive him to Frickert Farm. And really, they're quite a forward person. They invite the gang to kind of stay for dinner, stay over. And ultimately, it kind of leads into a little bit of a saga where the person at the farm is trying to create their own kind of fried chicken franchise, and there's a secret recipe and a secret feed for the chicken hidden somewhere within the farm, and it's their goal to kind of find it before anyone else does. And, you know, ultimately there is somebody trying to beat them to it. And one thing that I do appreciate about this episode, and we're going to come into this a little bit as well, is there's a few more side characters here. Like, there's a little bit more of it could be them, it could be them. Not sure here. Like, I think to that end, something this episode does quite well.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, and smASH pointed this out at the end of the last episode where we reviewed Wednesday is Missing, that this is actually well, I don't know how canon it was meant to be, but more or less a direct tie-in with the Curse of the Lake Monster movie, whereas at the start of that they were, you know, when they like fall down the barn and they start to fall in love because they caught each other.
Yes.
That was at Frickert Farm. And they were like, oh, we still need to pay Old Man Frickert off for the damage we did. And there was a scarecrow in that's, you know, chased them. So how canon it was meant to be to this, I don't know, but a good reference. Pretty good reference.
It was fun to see them reference back to that. Okay, so I guess getting into this episode a little bit more then. Like we say, the gang meet Jonathan Winters on the way to Frickert Farm, and they invite the gang to dinner. So first impressions of this character, JayBee, like you say, Jonathan Winters wasn't someone you were aware of before. What was your initial thoughts on them?
I mean, initially fun, because he was just joking, and that's something that I'm going to talk about in a couple of episodes' time, but I like it when the characters are just fun people, like, to interact with. Like, even if I don't know who Jonathan Winters is, like, if I say a movie that I really like, you know, the Alien Invaders, that had Lester in, who was the kind of kooky off-the-wall character, and I wasn't like, oh yeah, I remember Lester from, you know, season 5 of Game of Thrones. It was like, oh no, new character, let's learn about him. And I feel like that was the case here. I kind of learned some of his quirks, didn't always enjoy them, but I got to know him as, this is a character from Scooby called Jonathan Winters, not, oh yeah, here's Jonathan Winters and he's teleported into the Scooby world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I kind of see all these as their own individual people as opposed to who they existed as before this. But honestly, my opinion of them is, I feel like Scooby and Shaggy are saints because he annoys me so much. Like, my initial impression is that he's a fun guy, but by the end of it, you know, when Shaggy and Scooby are hiding in the chicken house, I feel like if it was me, it would have been to get away from him, because I just feel like his humour doesn't progress anywhere, and that may be a controversial opinion.
No, I think I get what you're saying. I don't hate it, but it's quite of the era, I think, in terms of corniness. Like, I think he's basically an impressionist, right? Or pretty much.
But is he?
He speaks like a voice actor. You know, he does the motions. He does different voices. So I don't know.
Is he though? Like, he's like, his thing about going to Frickert Farm is he was like, oh yes, I impersonate old Mrs. Frickers in my like show, and it's amazing. And when Mrs. Frickert started speaking, I was like, did that change? Their voice sounds the same. Is this supposed to be a joke that I'm missing? Because I'm not seeing a distinction here, and maybe this is just going over my head, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't my favourite, and I feel a bit bad because I genuinely, and this isn't like a spoiler of what I'm going to say, but I feel like the series started off so strongly for me with the first 3 episodes, and I almost feel like the second batch just, I don't know.
It's different, not in a good way.
Just missed. I think this episode kind of just missed for me. Like, there was a lot that I enjoyed, like stuff that I didn't expect. Like it was so funny with all the the situations with chasing the scarecrow tripping over. Like that massive chasing at the end was, I think, one of my favorites. Although this was the first episode in the whole series that I've actually actively started missing the chase songs. Like I wasn't even thinking about it in episodes 1, 2, and 3, but in this one I'm like, okay, there could have been a song whilst everyone was chasing the chicken. Like that, there could have been something there that would have elevated that a bit more.
I mean, going through the episode, we're kind of at the time where we meet that scary handyman guy. And for me, he screams Scooby villain. It's like, oh, it would not be you.
No, I don't think so. I always discount the ones that are too obvious. Like, I think maybe I was wrong in this instance, but in the Three Stooges episode, there's that guy, right? I don't know if his name is Hector or... Well, he's just a big guy that's scary. And everyone wanted to fire him, but they were too scared to. Instantly,
and it was him, wasn't it?
But instantly I discounted them because it's like, if they're so obvious, it's going to be the red herring. Like, it's going to be not them. A bit like, again, I've mentioned Alien Invaders. There's that creepy guy that was just hanging around the crime scene. Then it turns out at the end that he was just picking flowers, like, and pressing them. I kind of thought the same about this guy. Like, he looks like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. He could, you know, bounce a cat up and down until it, like, gives up the ghost. But ultimately, I think he's just going to show up at the wrong place at the wrong time. And he's going to have something for knitting or cooking, you know.
Well, we then meet Mrs. Frickert, who, like I said, the voice, I found it very underwhelming. But they start to find a little bit more about how somewhere within this farm there's a secret formula and hidden samples that would make their business, this chicken business, flourish, which I think, generally speaking, this isn't a bad plot. Like, no. I could see this done maybe a bit differently and it would have been great. I enjoy it. I like the idea that they had. I like the concept. And then we meet another character, which is the banker. And quite often with Scooby plots, it can come down to, you know, land and money and that kind of thing. So again, somebody that's kind of like ringing alarm bells in my head here of, okay, we've got a couple of suspects out there and I'm actually leaning towards you.
See, I actually didn't think about him at all. I feel like I just took everything I knew about Scooby and forgot it watching this. Because the second someone... And again, it seems too obvious that it wouldn't be it, but I think the people behind Scooby don't see kids seeing it as obvious, if that makes sense. Like, and that's understandable, right? If you're a kid, you're gonna think, oh, here's a big guy, he looks scary, it's him. Even if it happens to be the nicely spoken banker every time, as a kid, you're instinctively going to go along with the narrative that the filmmakers, you know, showmakers are spinning. And in this case, I discounted the scary guy, but when there was a banker, I just didn't think, like, and it should have been obvious to me, a 23 or however old I am year old guy, that this is who it's going to end up being, and I brain farted.
No, I'm shocked that you didn't kind of clock this, and not only that, but I feel like a lot of people will have seen them as the villain just purely because they sat on Scooby's head twice when he was under the sofa.
Yeah, that's like, what? Here's the thing. I thought that was funny.
Oh.
Like, it was sad, because I love dogs. But just the noise he was making, I kind of found it a bit comical. But, you know, I've changed a lot in what I said. Like, there was a comment recently on... I think they chose the stinkers, really. So they watched a Frank and Creepy review. And I said, oh, JB's like a social justice warrior, like, you know, like, because we were talking about the kind of Fat Daphne scene. And they were like, oh, this is ridiculous. And then they hopped over to the Scooby Natural review. And just because I mentioned, like, that Dean was being a bit too pushy, they were like, oh, this is the worst, like, but, you know, I've changed a lot. So I kind of acknowledge that. Well, you know what? You screw them, ultimately. But like,
I'd recommend that person watches the 2002 review.
No, they're an idiot. They actually are a complete idiot. 0 IQ.
I mean, I'd disagree. I'd say that you yourself know, as a character, not as a character, but as a person, you've developed while we've done our channel.
Well, I've developed a character for the reviews that isn't reality. I think it's fair to say, but it's like me plus 10, because if you're just reviewing this straightly, if that's the word, like if you're just reviewing this straight, I feel like you just it comes across as too self-serious and cringy. There has to be a bit of joke around. But my point being is that I've kind of developed in a way that I can see things that are just funny. Like at no point am I thinking that this is going to lead into a conversation about animal cruelty or, you know, disregard of life. But I do think you're right in that in kids' minds, if they see someone sitting on Scooby like that, for all, you know, a few of them might chuckle, it ultimately stacks up to like bad things that character's done and imposed upon like the title character ultimately.
And I mean, I guess going back to it, because it's the first I've heard about that comment, honestly, I'd say you've developed into a bit of a pervy Simpsons Frank and creepy, so they should maybe progress forward a little bit.
Here's the thing though, they were like, oh, why are you talking about this? No one else talks about this. And
that's
it's like,
kind of the point.
Like, it's okay, it's not a review, it is a review, but it's a review as part of a podcast, which means that you talk about everything to do with it, the surrounding situations, you have a discussion. If no one else is talking about it, then that's why we're here. And I personally think, I don't want to say we do the best reviews, because honestly I don't listen to other reviews, but definitely I think we do the best interviews, and so the whole kind of street cred, quote unquote, of us, I think is quite impressive.
I'm gonna say we perhaps do them like, I'm gonna say we couldn't be any more honest in our reviews. Like, I'd say this is a very, because I feel like we have nothing or links or anything that we try to maintain. So if we don't like something like Kate McCucci's voice, you're gonna hear we don't like Kate McCucci's voice.
But I've backed out of some stuff. Like, I did end up, you know, when I said in the Q&A that I think she's the effing worst.
Yeah.
I did in fact censor that.
Well, yeah, it's swearing.
Yeah.
But like, you censor swear, it doesn't change the opinion.
No.
You still said and had the opinion, and like, you know, it's not like
swearing.
We have no affiliations with Warner Brothers or anything. We'll openly admit that we think they're the worst marketers in the world. Like,
and I said that to Bill Haller. And if you haven't watched that interview, it's gone crazy, so please check that out. But like, everyone else is like too busy on the hands and knees, like, Warner, give us that free DVD, whereas we're kind of there like, yeah, come on, I'll take you on.
Yeah, like, we're like the problem child, and it's fun because sometimes you need to hear things, and like, ultimately they're terrible at marketing, and we're never gonna lie about that. Like, if you take a look at the new Buzz Lightyear movie that came out, like, there was a cute little character in that called Socks, and you can go into toy stores now.
Oh yeah.
And, like, I'm not even joking, we were in a shopping mall the other day, like literally yesterday, and there was a little girl in her pushchair holding a little teddy bear of the Socks character, and it's like, great, if you'd have made one of them for Holiday Horn, it'd have covered the movie.
Yeah, literally,
but
Puppy Scooby in a Christmas hat. Oh man, I think even without, if they wanted to crowdfund the movie, so to speak, they could get it just releasing that single plush.
Just for merch. This is what they're missing, okay? There is never any merch for anything, okay? Like, again, this might be controversial, but what did we actually get for Scoob realistically? We got an adaptation of a Mystery Machine that they've already made 50 of. A slight variation on, like, even if you go to our local toy store, like, the characters that are with the Scoob stuff are just the standard ones that have the mystery incorporated bows for Velma and that kind of thing. They literally made about 5 things that we got access to for Scoob. And it's like, that was a theatrical release. What are you doing? But anyway, I think we've kind of maybe sidetracked a little bit here.
Yeah, but it was just about like the context around us as reviewers and just that ridiculous comment, which was just so brain dead. Genuinely. And I've got an aneurysm and I know that.
Oh my god, JayBee. Okay, so moving on slightly. Ultimately, the gang split up. They're gonna try and find the secret formula, and in doing so,
oh my gosh! Every time though they said secret formula, I was imagining SpongeBob. You don't know what that means?
That reference straight over my head.
So okay, do you know what I mean by ravioli?
No.
Give me the formula.
No.
Okay. If you know that quote, please comment that down below because, oh man.
Okay, so ultimately we see this creepy scarecrow, and we know that for all they're not doing much, I think we can kind of tell at this stage that they're meant to be the villain.
Yeah.
So there's what, as they're kind of splitting up and trying to find things out, like there's one scene in this that I really do enjoy, which is the water wheel, where Shaggy's going around on the water wheel, and then someone jumps out of the window trying to save them. They're going around on the water wheel, and then Scooby goes around on the water wheel, and then Jonathan Winters is like, oh, if I hadn't hurt my back, I'd have been on that. It looked so fun. And I'm like, Shaggy, how are you not like hitting him across the face? I swear, I'd be so angry I'd have slapped him by now.
Here's what I noticed about the water wheel scene. Is it played a song like in the score that I originally associated just with the Three Stooges, and I think it's going to be recurring throughout this series, but I've just dubbed it the Shenanigans score because I think that it's going to be the new piece of like for the purpose score from Scooby that they bring into this. I don't think it hits quite as well as the original one, like the mystery score, but it's welcome and I like it.
So while they're in this barn, they drop flour on one of these guys. I literally just dubbed them the hippie guy. I can't actually remember their name. And it turns out that, again, like, I think there's two of them. It's kind of like, okay, could it be you? So again, we're kind of getting lots of characters in the mix here of, could it be you? You're acting suspiciously. You're someone we'd normally overlook. So could it be you? Like, I really think this is quite a dynamic episode, I want to say, really.
It's the most slapstick and almost verging on, same with the Addams Family episode, supernatural, because I'm sure there's not like a chicken thing that makes chickens go crazy. Like that's kind of like Witch's Ghost territory where the turkey goes crazy. So I don't know, I enjoy the vibe of the episode. I think the vibe of the episode carries it. I think if it wasn't as out there and crazy, like we literally had a granny chasing a massive chicken on like a moped while Fred was chasing the chicken in the mystery machine.
Yeah, it was fun. It was funny, it really was. And okay, so we like our little tangents and kind of discussions here. So I want to talk about something here. So this episode was filmed in the 80s, right?
I think 70s.
Okay, so I don't have my phone with me to do my research here, but from having some conversations at work, I know a little bit about this. So the two people that were looking around said they were approaching the Mrs. Frickert because they wanted to do a festival in their barn and associated it to Woodstock, right?
Is that the bad one?
Okay, so that's what they said though, right?
Yeah.
So this thing's just been released on Netflix that actually takes a look into the second Woodstock that was done. So this was that they wanted to do a second one. There was a second one done.
Wait, so that awful thing happened and then they made a sequel?
Okay, well, there was one done badly, but I think the music or something was supposed to have been amazing, and they were like, okay, we want to do it again, but do it right. So I think if I'm correct in saying this, they did it again in 1999. So after this would have been recorded, they actually did do a second one, and it was even worse. And there's been
God.
There's been a documentary about it on Netflix recently. That, and the reason I know about this is because a lot of people that I work with were like interested in it. But like apparently after the second one had happened, people said it looked like a war scene. There was there'd just been fires, everything had been destroyed, they'd been pulling all the stuff down from the stage.
Why go to something like this anyway though?
So they were saying they wanted to do a second one of this thing. They did do a second one of this thing, and it was abominable.
So they could have stopped it here. Like the Scooby and
combined it to one barn and old Frickert farm.
Why do they? I don't know why they do this. I wouldn't go to any of these stupid events. Like you're asking for trouble, really. If you go, not like it's like victim blaming. But I want to say, if you go out to a crowded area full of other humans, you're just asking for trouble. I wouldn't do that. I'm scared of people.
Okay, so moving on, I just thought that was a fun little, well, it wasn't very fun, but like a little tangent that was worth including.
It was a riot.
Quite literally. So one of the next scenes is we have Jonathan Winters in the barn with Shaggy and Scooby, throwing his voice, trying to like deceive the Scarecrow, who's literally in like the stable next to them. We can hear exactly what's been said. So again, his character's a little bit kind of like annoying here. I could be wrong. Could be a controversial opinion. But one thing I do like is when Shaggy talks about throwing his voice, because he did that in like series 1 of Where Are You? And I always like it when you have these little callbacks, because I don't feel there's enough continuity in Scooby.
But then he did it badly, which isn't really on point. But I did like, because I thought it was going to be a situation where either the Scarecrow knew the situation was bad and the plan would fail, or he would fall for it, and it would be a funny scene where he just gets jumped. But I wasn't expecting the Scarecrow to be like literally right next to them, and I thought that was quite funny, because I think it dragged out for too long. But then in hindsight, when you look back at it, the fact that it was dragging on and the Scarecrow was like right next to them, I think it just makes it funnier.
Okay. So, like you said, it was quite funny, but this isn't the end of it yet. These episodes do go on a little bit longer. So ultimately, after a little bit of kind of Shaggy and Scooby being too scared to stop them, it ends up in, I don't know what you call these things.
What, the silo?
It's not a silo. It's like a seed store or something.
The thing full of chickens, or literally like it looks like a silo.
Yeah, the thing that looks like a silo is what I was getting at. It's in the chicken feed bit. So they basically, the villain ends up going in there. Scooby and Shaggy end up in, like you say, kind of like the chicken house, which is where they discover the like secret formula, and one of the chickens eats it and starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, so the chicken house just kind of blows up and you just have this one huge chicken left. In the meantime, the gang are in the grain store, and the villain kind of falls into the grain.
This is just ridiculous. He literally just trips up a hammer. He trips over a hammer, and that's the kind of, like, you know, gone are Fred's elaborate traps. In this one, he just falls over.
Yeah, bring back, like, let's go on to Mystery Incorporated, where we get some elaborate traps from Fred. But no, like you say, it's a simple hammer. They fall out of the feed store as Shaggy, Scooby, and the giant chicken.
Ooh, I like that, actually. You know when, like, McFly and Busted collabed and it was McBuster?
Yeah.
You got a simple plan, MC Hammer, simple hammer. I want that. I want it. Simple hammer.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so they find them in the chicken feed, and then, like JayBee was saying, we get the giant chicken chase, where we have the grandma in, like, her little bicycle thing, little motorbike. We have Fred in the mystery
They should have given her one of those little dolly things that Granny's was about on nowadays.
It's called a mobility scooter.
They should give her one of those.
But ultimately, we find that the chicken shrinks again, that the formula isn't actually permanent, and then we unmask the Scarecrow to be the banker.
Ooh.
So that's kind of where this episode finishes off. Now, I think at this stage we're going to head over to some verdicts. So, JayBee?
This is my least favourite episode so far. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first 3 episodes. It wasn't as engaging. And I think one of my things that I'm going to think about this is, would I watch it again? Yes or no? And do I want to know more about the characters? So, from the first one, that's Laurel and Hardy. I didn't want to know more about them, but I would watch that episode again. Second one was, God, Batman and Robin. I kind of feel like I know all I need to know about Batman and Robin, but if I didn't 100%, I would have looked into more of their stuff, and I would watch the episode again. Last one, we did...
Oh yes, we actually went on to watch an Addams Family movie, Addams Family Values, after that.
The weirdest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Literally the weirdest movie. But I was curious enough to watch that, and I technically watched it twice. And also, I would watch the episode again. With this, I wouldn't watch the episode again in a rush, and I don't want to know more about Jonathan Winters. So, I think it's either the weakest smash or a mild pass. I don't know with this one. I honestly could, and they do this in the episode, I could honestly flip a coin to decide my verdict. I think ultimately, because of the fun moments, It is, and it wasn't annoying. I wasn't annoyed by Jonathan Winters in the way that you seem to be. So I think it's enough for it to be the weakest of smashes for this one, for me personally.
See, I think what's really interesting, me and JayBee have seemed to be in sync with so many things over the last couple of days, it's insane. But if you look at the bottom of my page here, JayBee, I've literally put smash / pass, because I think it is really on the fence. Like, for me, I genuinely don't like Jonathan Winters. If you were to say to me he's in the next episode, I'd be like, okay, great. I'll leave this down to you, Smash and Rihanna. I can't. I genuinely don't like the character that they have here. However, the episode, I absolutely love the story. I love that kind of, oh, they're looking for a formula. I love that there's multiple people involved, so you kind of have that debate of, is it this person? Is it this person? And ultimately, the chase scene's really fun. Like you say, could do with a song in the background, but I love the episode. I just hate the character, but I'm gonna say smash.
I like that. I like that. So I guess that's 2 smashes. Unanimous smash for this. Obviously, we're a couple of co-hosts down. However, you know what I mean? They can say their thing whenever they say it, you know. The next one we have is Guess Who's Not Coming to Dinner. So this is one that I've been excited to talk about for a while because of the reference in 2002 about Scooby cleaning his beans at Don Knotts' Christmas party. But I guess in terms of community news, I just want to shout out our Bill Haller episode where we released it like a couple of days ago as of, you know, recording this. And it's just done so incredibly. Massive support for it. It's just been amazing.
I guess I have some community news that I want to go over, but we've already kind of gone over this anyway. So I believe this is going out on Monday the 5th of September, and that means tomorrow is the release of the 3rd and possibly final Daphne and Velma book. We're so excited to review that, to get to read that, then go over it, and hopefully, you know, have some really good like content coming up on the channel in regards to possibly speaking about Morgan Baden again and stuff like that, to work out where things are going to be at after this book. I really enjoyed the first 2. I've almost finished rereading them, ready for that 3rd release. So yeah, that's all really exciting. And I guess, of course, Trick or Treat's always kind of looming in the background of things coming up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's not coming to dinner? I guess you'll just have to wait till next time to find out. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to JayBee Milly, and follow our link tree down below, which detail all of our media coverage, our TikTok, our Instagram, and our Twitter. Thank you.